The old abandoned mansion had been the talk of the town for as long as anyone could remember. It was said to be haunted by the spirits of the previous occupants who had died in strange and mysterious circumstances. No one had lived in the house for years, and it had become a place of legends and folklore. But for a group of amateur ghost hunters, the abandoned mansion was the ultimate challenge. They wanted to prove to the world that ghosts and spirits were real, and they were determined to capture proof of the paranormal activity inside the house. As they entered the mansion, they were immediately struck by the musty, damp smell that filled the air. The walls were covered in a thick layer of cobwebs, and the furniture was covered in dust. They set up their equipment and started exploring the house, determined to capture something on film. The first floor of the house was relatively quiet, but as they started to climb the stairs to the second floor, they heard strange noises coming from the shadows. They followed the noises to a room at the end of the hall, and as they entered, they were hit with a cold gust of wind. In the center of the room, there was a ghostly figure of a young woman. She was dressed in a long white dress, and her hair was wild and unkempt. Her eyes were empty and hollow, and she was pointing towards them. The ghost hunters were paralyzed with fear, and they could barely breathe. Suddenly, the ghostly figure disappeared, and the room was plunged into darkness. The ghost hunters stumbled around, trying to find the exit, but the door wouldn't budge. They were trapped in the room with the ghost. As they tried to calm themselves, they noticed that the room was starting to change. The walls started to close in, and the air became colder. The ghost hunters were panicking, but just as they thought all was lost, the door suddenly creaked open. They stumbled into the hallway, and as they turned to run down the stairs, they saw that the ghostly figure of the young woman was standing at the bottom of the stairs, blocking their way. They tried to run past her, but she was too fast, and she cornered them at the top of the stairs. The ghost hunters were trapped, and they knew that they were going to die. But just as the ghostly figure was about to reach them, there was a sudden flash of light, and the ghostly figure disappeared. When the ghost hunters finally emerged from the mansion, they were changed people. They could never forget the experience they had gone through, and they never spoke of what had happened in the mansion again. Years later, a group of paranormal investigators entered the mansion, determined to uncover the truth behind the ghostly figure of the young woman. They found a hidden room in the basement, where they discovered the journal of the previous owner. The journal revealed a shocking story of how the young woman had been murdered by her husband in that very room. A soul had been trapped in the mansion, seeking revenge on anyone who entered her territory. The paranormal investigators knew that they had to put the young woman's soul to rest, and they performed a ritual to release her from the mansion. And from that day on, the mansion was no longer haunted, and the ghostly figure of the young woman was never seen again. But for the ghost hunters who had experienced the terror of the mansion, the memory of that fateful night would haunt them forever. They knew that the ghostly figure of the young woman was still out there, seeking revenge on anyone who dared to enter her